You're as known for the movie you didn't do, The Hobbit, as the ones that you did.
Yeah.
How hard was it to walk away from that film after working on it in pre-production for so long?
It doesn't get harder than that. I mean, it's the hardest decision I've ever taken. I have incredible heartache. I feel terrible about it. It's very hard. It's getting a little easier to talk about it, but essentially it's like you've been recently widowed and everybody asking you exactly how your wife died. It's pretty morbid.
And what helped you make that decision?
There was no other choice. I mean, I kept postponing, I kept fending off the problems, I kept compartmentalizing, we did everything we could.
With Del Toro gone, the crew could not use much of what they had planned, since the original plan was based around Del Toro's vision and directorial plan. While this version of The Hobbit never came to be, many details of Del Toro's Hobbit have been made available over the years. Guillermo Del Toro wanted to split The Hobbit into 2 films, with the first film being the majority of the Hobbit story, and the second film filling in some of the timeline between The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, providing a smooth transition between the 2 stories. For Del Toro, he saw the story of The Hobbit as a story of loss and innocence, and he wanted to draw many parallels between The Hobbit and World War I, the war Tolkien fought in before writing The Hobbit. As far as the technical side of production, Del Toro wanted to use scale models and background paintings like those used in Lord of the Rings for special effects.
Part of the richness of any miniature is the amount of fine texture you can get into it. Textured up, of course, then it starts to be more interesting and it starts to be more believable.
But he also wanted to utilize animatronics. In fact, some characters were planned to be a mix of CGI and animatronics, rather than just CGI, like many of the characters in the final films were. The aesthetic style of the film was planned to be similar to that of Jackson's Lord of the Rings project, to the point that Del Toro hired many of the same artists and designers Jackson used for Lord of the Rings. Del Toro also wanted to draw more inspiration from Tolkien's original drawings in the Book of the Hobbit, whereas the Jackson movies did not draw as much inspiration from these sketches. Another way Del Toro sought to stay true to Tolkien's books was in how the Ring of Power would have been portrayed. In the original Hobbit book, Tolkien did not have plans to make the ring into an object of evil. Instead, it was simply just a ring that could turn the user invisible. It wasn't until he wrote The Lord of the Rings that Tolkien decided to give the ring a more sinister value. Del Toro wished to follow this, but not having any connection to Sauron or giving any implications that the ring has any other power than turning the user invisible. One major thing Del Toro wished to change from Jackson's Middle-earth universe was the designs of the creatures, specifically the wargs. Del Toro believed the wargs in Jackson's universe looked too much like larger wolves, and instead wanted to base the design of wargs more on the demonic wolves from Norse mythology. Another difference from Jackson's version of The Hobbit comes with how Del Toro wanted to portray some of the scenes from the book Jackson did not believe would translate well to the movie. In the Hobbit book, Bard the Bowman is not introduced until Smaug is attacking Lake Town, and as such, Bard is not given much character. The Battle of the Five Armies in the book also presented a challenge to the filmmakers. The filmmakers wanted to put this large battle to the screen, but in the book, nothing about the battle is described. Instead, Bilbo is knocked unconscious as the battle starts, and only hears about what occurred from the other dwarves after he wakes up. Tolkien had Bilbo be knocked out during the battle because he did not want to describe the war and to make it seem like something grandiose, exciting, or fun. Since Tolkien had served in World War I and saw the brutality of war and even saw friends die, he did not want to instill in children the idea that war is anything to find enjoyable. Del Toro respected both of these decisions in the book and saw them as iconic, claiming his version of the film would attempt to portray these moments the way they were originally intended. The casting of Del Toro's film was also planned to be much different from the final Jackson version of the film. Originally, Del Toro wanted Ron Perlman to be Smaug, but then decided Ron Perlman would be better suited to play Baron. Brian Blessed was who Del Toro wanted for Thorin, Ian McShane could have played one of the dwarves, and Doug Jones would have been Thranduil. Bilbo was going to be played by Ian Holm. None of these casting choices were ever finalized though, because of the many delays of the script. One casting idea Del Toro had that ended up in the final version of the Hobbit films was Sylvester McCoy as Radagast. Overall, Del Toro wanted his film to feature much less action and be more of a fairy tale than the film Jackson created. With Del Toro leaving the directorial role, however, this edition of the film needed to be scrapped as the studios looked to find a new director for the Hobbit films. The directors considered at the time included Peter Jackson, Neil Blomkamp, Brett Ratner, David Yates, and David Dobkin. After much time, October of 2010 arrived, and the studios announced that Peter Jackson would be taking over as director for the Hobbit project, and that filming would begin in February of 2011. Additionally, Peter Jackson's version of The Hobbit would be a trilogy, stretching the story of The Hobbit into 2 films, with the last film making extensive use of the Lord of the Rings appendices. This third film would have likely used the appendices in the same way Del Toro planned to use them to connect The Hobbit to The Lord of the Rings. Originally, this third film was titled There and Back Again. With Peter Jackson now directing, production on this new Hobbit trilogy began in March of 2011. Thank you for watching this clip from our mini documentary on the production of The Hobbit. If you would like to watch the full documentary, select the icon on your left now. You can also watch another clip by selecting the box on the right. Make sure to follow us on social media for more behind the scenes content and to like and subscribe to support Production Chronicles. You can also help support Production Chronicles monetarily with a tip, or you can purchase film-inspired merchandise. All links are in the description. Thank you again for watching and supporting Production Chronicles.